Afternoon. This is U.S. Immigration Attorney Sharifa Tharpe. Happy Friday. So, I have a very engaging topic that I want to talk to you about. Actually, we're going to be doing some brainstorming today. So, usually, when I get started with my clients, especially when it comes on to family based and marriage based, as well as VAWA, we have to focus on the bona fides of the marriage. We have to focus on what evidence my clients can show that to show that it's real, that their marriage is real. But this is not only required in the marriage base, this is also required in VAWA. So I thought I would change things up a little bit, and I'll ask you, if you had to submit your marriage based application, what would you submit? What kinds of evidence based on your particular situation, based on your particular marriage, what kinds of evidence would you put attached to your application to show that your marriage is real? Now, um, let me remind you that this is very, very important. It is maybe even the single most important aspect of applying for marriage base as well as VAWA, because they want to make sure that as a couple or as a VAWA applicant, you are not fraudulently claiming a marriage that is not real, right? If you entered a marriage only for business purposes, then it's not a real marriage, it's a business arrangement. The problem is business marriages are not permitted, right? Arranged marriages, yes, because remember, arranged marriages it's a cultural norm, it's a cultural tradition in some countries. So as long as you can show that it's an arranged marriage, but this couple that's being put together, they are going to grow as a couple, and their plan is to spend their lives together, they can still move forward through the process. But if it's not your cultural norm to enter into a marriage, just kind of start out the marriage as an arrangement, then it's a business marriage, and business marriages are illegal in the United States. So, if you want to avoid any kinds of accusations that you entered a marriage for business purposes, or you'll hear for immigration purposes, you definitely want to be prepared from the start to submit the best evidence that you can to show that you're the real deal. So go ahead, put in the comments right now. Put in the comments what types of evidence come to your mind that you have that you would submit with your application to prove that your marriage is real. I want to go over some of those types of evidence to be able to discuss those and talk about the pros and cons of those, and maybe even talk about whether that is even good evidence. So go ahead, and I'm going to go through the list, and we'll brainstorm about some of the best types of evidence to submit. Now I'm on 3 channels right now, and I'm keeping an eye on all 3 of them. I'm on YouTube, I'm on Facebook, and I'm on Instagram. So feel free to put your comments on in wherever you are, put the comments in right now, and I'll be able to see it. I'm scrolling through now to see. All right, so I see insurance, bank statements, and photos. So, yep, definitely. That's a good start. What I do want to point out to you is that the way that you present the evidence is also going to can either make or break your application. Yes, absolutely. Insurance that's shared by the both of you. And you want to provide detailed insurance information. So you want to show, for example, you do want to show, where's this insurance coming from? Did the petitioner purchase it, or did the beneficiary, as in the immigrant, purchase it? Also, is it an employer sponsored insurance? If it's health insurance, for the car insurance, what are the details of the car insurance? What are the cars involved? Your insurance cards can work, and also an attachment of the insurance policies. So they do have the verification of insurance, the car insurance, or vehicle insurance, you can include that. And then there's life insurance as well. Life insurance is also a type of document that is good as long as, one of the two spouses are the beneficiary of the life insurance, meaning that the life insurance is if something happens, God forbid, something happens to one spouse, that the other spouse benefits. And, when you're in a real marriage and you have a real family, you do want to have life insurance to make sure that if something happens to one of you, your children are taken care of, or at least your spouse is taken care of. So it does say a lot. That document says a lot that you are trusting that your spouse, you're trusting in your spouse, and you're also wanting the best for your spouse in the long run, in the future. Because the key part of these documents is they want to see that you're looking to the future, you're planning for the future, that you are going to spend your lives together. Now, bank statements. Bank statements are great. Joint bank statements are great. But it can also go against you if those bank statements look suspect, right? So the officers are very, very, very privy to different arrangements. Unfortunately, when people enter marriages fraudulently, they know to add to supply these documents too. But when they supply them, they look out for certain things in these documents to identify whether these are genuine documents or whether these documents were set up just for the marriage. So with the joint bank statement, if you've had the joint bank statement for a short period of time, or if you've had it for a while, the both of your names are on it, but no money's going in, no money is going out. Maybe you just did the minimum amount to start the bank account. So you put $50 in there and that $50 has never moved, or the $50 was drawn right after the bank account was opened and now it's overdrawn and it's just there neglected. That I have seen that become a red flag. And I've seen officers argue just based on that a marriage is not real. So you want to be very careful about not only supplying these, you can't just give these documents mindlessly. You have to make sure that you're thoughtful about the quality of the documents and what the documents are telling the officers, because they are very privy to the different scams and the different ways that people try to make things look real. So with a joint bank statement, a real genuine couple that has a joint bank statement, you're going to be doing transactions. You're living together, or if you're not living together, if one spouse is outside of the United States, but the both of you have a joint bank account, you're doing business in the bank account together. Maybe you're paying for certain expenses out of the bank account. It's usually very active. You're going to be transferring money in and out of the account. Both people are going to be doing that. And so when they don't see that type of activity, it makes them question whether this is real. But this makes me bring up another topic here is don't try to make your marriage something it is not. If you as a couple, your financial arrangement was never to have a joint bank account, because you do have some couples that they do function separately in regards to their bank accounts, then what do you have to show that you have been commingling your funds, or you have been taking financial responsibility or making different financial arrangements in other ways, right? So don't try to now hurry up, scramble, open a bank account, and then try to present that, because that could raise a red flag unless you truly intend to use that bank account or use it for savings, pump your money in there. So another thing is, if you have a savings account, then you should be having money in there, putting money in there regularly. But there are other ways to show your financial arrangements or commingling. If you don't have a joint bank statement together, there are other things that you've been doing as a married couple, right? You maybe transfer money to your each other's bank account. You may be selling each other, cash apping each other. Document those. You may be sending money through money transfer companies like Western Union. Keep your receipts to show that even though you don't have a joint bank account, you're doing business in other ways. Photos are good, But I like to say this: photos are the cherry on top. It's not going to make your case be approved by giving them 100 photos, right? If you give them 100 photos, they're, it's nice and all. They see all of this on the in the pictures, but they still want to know what your intentions are. They still want to know, are you planning a future together? The photos just solidify that for them, but it's not going to make your case successful. If you send a bunch of photos and your marriage certificate, they are going to be very skeptical about the genuine how genuine your marriage is, and they are going to have a lot of questions, and you could face a denial. So that's a misconception: is, oh, just send them a whole album of photos and you'll be fine. Nope. Okay, so Suwana is giving us a lot of the tea here. I love this. So proof that we live together. Yes. So, I will get, sometimes I'll get this question, and at this point when I get questions like that, I'm like, you really don't have a good case here, and something is wrong. And if an officer sees that, they are going to see that something is wrong. But I'll get this: we don't live together, we don't have a bank account together, we don't like taking pictures together, we don't have children together, we never go places together, we don't exchange money, we have separate bills. And I'm like, a married couple, that's the complete opposite of a married couple. So I as an attorney get suspicious, right? Because I don't represent clients who they're not genuine. And when I hear things like this, where it's like, you don't have any of these together, it's like something is wrong with your marriage, something is going wrong, which that may be a VAWA issue. Maybe there's a control issue where one spouse is preventing the other from getting all of these things done. So sometimes that allows me to identify that something is wrong. Or if it's like, okay, nothing is wrong, we just don't have all of these together, then it makes me suspicious. And I can tell them right off the bat that it's not going to work out, right? If I advocate for my clients, and an individual is telling me that they don't have anything, what do you think an officer who has to make the final decision is going to think about that? So if you're in a situation where you're married but you have none of those, then it's time to question your your spouse. It's time to get together and really figure out what your goals are for the future and work towards those goals. Now, if your spouse is outside of the United States, yes, you're not going to have a joint lease. You're not going to live together, but you're still going to do things as a married couple. When I represent clients, they send money to each other. Sometimes they sign joint leases, even though they're not in the same country. Sometimes they do Western unions. So they still, as a married couple, and they have multiple trips in and out, back and forth, to see each other, to support their marriage while they are waiting for their process to be completed. And so they tend to be a little more lenient about the requirement to live together and that kind of evidence when the spouse is outside of the United States. But when you're going through adjustment of status and you live in the same town, you just don't live in the same place, and you have no explanation for why you're not living together, and you have no bills together, you have nothing together, you don't share money together, you don't share benefits together, then something is wrong. And that's where you need to, if the spouse is the problem, your spouse is the problem, you're the immigrant, then you can always talk to me about this to figure out if VAWA applying on your own is going to be an option here if you're being mistreated by that US citizen or resident spouse. So, living together, you can show things like a joint lease. But if you live with family, so I have seen that where, you may not be in a position to have a place for yourselves together yet. So you may be living with a relative. And this is where affidavits from the person that you're living with is going to be very important. or a type of verification form that's notarized indicating that the type of arrangement that you have with this individual is going to be an alternative to a joint lease or a mortgage. Um, So the phone bill, joint phone bill, yes, absolutely. To have a joint. So everything here that we are listing, it has to be joint if you're going to do a phone bill. And if you're living separately, phone records, WhatsApp records are is also can show how much you have been in touch with each other on a daily basis while your spouse is outside of the United States. The tax filing as a married couple, yes. So if you're filing taxes together, then that is also going to be a very, very important piece of evidence to submit. All right. Keep putting those in. Okay, so lease agreement, rent, insurance, photos, filing jointly. So absolutely. So yes, Carol, that's correct. So all of those are important. And I'm going to touch on another where if, say, you want to make sure you strengthen your application, other things you can do to strengthen the type of evidence that you have. What if the marriage is new and one person is unemployed? So, usually, when two people get married, you're still going to be starting your lives together. Yes, one may be unemployed, but how are you figuring that out together? And what evidence can you show that to show how you're moving forward from that? Now, if you're talking about the affidavit of support, you know, that what the person, if the U.S. citizen is unemployed, and is that going to be a problem? It's for the affidavit of support. If they're unemployed, they'll need to make sure that they can get a co-sponsor for that. But when one person is unemployed, you still have to be making life work for the both of you, right? And in that case, you still will find some evidence that you're going to have between each other, because that's what married couples do. Um, All right. These are all, thank you so much for the information. That this is great. I love that we're brainstorming together about this. Letters, mail coming to the couple's address. So yes, so if if worst case scenario, say you do have a situation, and this usually comes up with VAWA, right? Because with VAWA, you still do have to show that your marriage is you enter the marriage in good faith, even though now your spouse is mistreating you. And in cases like this, it's common now with a married couple that's applying together. I hardly buy the argument that you have nothing to show, right? Something is wrong there. But in a VAWA case where the immigrant spouse is escaping the situation, or they did not have a lot of power in the relationship, it's very common for them to just leave with the clothes on their back. They don't really have a lot of joint documentation because the US citizen or resident spouse controlled all of that, kept them from having a bank account or kept them from having joint accounts with them, so they could not get a joint bank statement, or they stopped them from going on the lease agreement. This is very common in these types of situations where the US citizen or legal permanent resident spouse is mistreating them. And in cases like this, there are alternatives to strengthen, because now it's not two people applying saying we're a real couple. It's somebody that's saying, please provide me evidence because please provide me relief because I was mistreated by my spouse, and I had to escape the situation, and I escaped with very little, right? Or left the situation with very little. And this is where Mr. Tusk's suggestions, the letters and mail going to the same address, can still help to prove that they resided together, because you do have to show at some point you resided together. So important mail, maybe pictures of mail going to the same address or going to the address of the spouse instead of a joint lease, can work. Also, affidavits from friends and family who either know you as a couple if you're applying together, or who knew your marriage, knew your situation, can also the speak to the fact that they observed you enter the marriage in good faith, what they observed, what was good that they observed, and then what did they observe that was bad, or witness that was abusive, or that was mistreatment. And then Mr. Tusk is getting really creative here, and I like this. So a joint gym membership, absolutely. Joint gym membership, it's great, but I would say it's similar to the photos, right? It's not, it's cherry on top. It's cute, but it's not going to, any two people can get a joint gym membership. So you want to make sure that you focus on evidence that's permanent, where you're committed to it, where not just any two people can do this. You know, you it's showing, it's telling the story about your relationship and your intentions for the future. So things like a joint gym membership, it's nice. It's like the photos, oh, nice. It can even spark a conversation in the interview, where the officer may, ask questions about your gym membership, but that's not going to make everything successful. Documents to show they share a pet together. So yes, that's also great, especially if the pet is at the same address. Documents to show they both adopted kids together. Absolutely, that definitely seals the deal. So you have kids together, you adopted kids together. That there seals the deal. A joint home mortgage seals the deal. That's definitely great evidence, because not any two people are going to go and adopt children together. It's a very tedious process, and not any two people are going to go and buy a house together. So absolutely. What if one spouse works a couple of hours away from the other spouse, but they live together? So wherever they work, that's fine, but as long as they live together. Now you may have situations where you work very far, so maybe even though you live in the same place, you have a joint lease, maybe you go stay with their relatives to make going to work easier. So maybe you go to your relative's house to make your going to work easier, right? And if that's the case, then you have to explain this, right? But it doesn't change the fact that at the end of the day, you live together. And that's normal. That's a normal way of living. You may have to, do things like that, where one spouse is in one area for the rest of the week, the other spouse is in somewhere else. But if you're coming together at the same address, that's fine. Now, it's not to say you can't not live together, right? If you don't live together, say you live in completely different states, you want to be able to explain that. You're going to have to be ready to explain that, because if you rub the officer the wrong way, you say something that sounds like BS, then you're going to get a very bad result. So you want to make sure that, and it's usually in situations like that is easier. So for example, if you're both students and you decided to move forward with your marriage, but you're not living together right now because you're both finishing the last year of college or last year of whatever course you're pursuing, then sure, that can be a reason, but you have to show evidence, right? That's a good reason that you're living apart, but you have to show evidence, and you have to still show other types of evidence to show that you're doing things together as a married couple. Are you saving together then? So even though you're both in different states, doing a long distance marriage right now until you're finished with school, are you saving so when you do finish school, you can get an apartment together in one state? So, these are things that you have to think about, be thoughtful about, because the marriage certificate and some pictures will not be enough. and definitely putting that you live at different addresses is going to raise a red flag automatically. And then it's that's where, when I represent my clients, we have to work through these issues and be prepared for those questions to come up at the interview. You are welcome. Thanks so much for joining us. All right. So, how many affidavits would you recommend? Also, per my previous question, is a beneficiary spouse that's unemployed and the couple lives with family. So, affidavits, I recommend at least two, and I usually two. So, one from the U.S. citizen's side, and one, at least one, from the immigrant family side, family and friends. So, you want people who can write affidavits to represent both sides. Now, if you can do at least two, if you can get more, that's great. But another question that I've seen officers raise to support their basis to deny is, oh, we only saw affidavits from the immigrant side. Why is that? Why didn't we get affidavits from the citizen side? And they also can read into, if your case is really shabby, they can read into the type, the evidence, like even the benefits we talked about previously. So if, for example, you got dental insurance, but the immigrant is paying for all of that. The immigrant is paying for the car insurance. The immigrant spouse is paying for, the apartment. The immigrant spouse is paying for the bills, and there's nothing going on with the petitioner side, they also ask questions about that, and that looks suspicious to them as well. And some marriages, it's all about arrangement, and I have advocated and turned things around for those individuals who had to face questions like that, and we have turned that from a denial to an approval. But when you're navigating this process on your own, these are things that you wouldn't necessarily be prepared to tackle, that they do bring up, right? And then I can use my legal arguments based on my knowledge to point out that not all marriages are going to be the same, because they tend to have this very perfect view of marriage, right? So the USCIS sort of imposes this idealist viewpoint of marriage, and marriage is really not like that. You do have people that get married that they want to remain independent, and so they're not going to present all of this great evidence that the USCIS wants. And so that's where it's my job as the attorney to push back if these questions come up, to push back a little, to remind them that it's not about presenting the perfect marriage. It's about showing that this is a real marriage, that they're trying to get their lives together in the United States, and that my clients have provided sufficient evidence to show that. Um, all right. For adjustment of status, is it much that me and my partner, is it much? So with the adjustment of status, it's going to, if you're doing adjustment of status here in the United States, they are waiving some marriage fees if you come really good with a great application. They have no additional questions. They are now sending green cards in the mail. And so it's possible that that could happen. However, so it's not, you may not be required to, but expect it. It has come to be an expected part of the process to have an interview. And it doesn't mean if you have the interview, oh my gosh, something is wrong. They may just want to follow up. They may just want to see how you look in person, and to make sure you do present the way that you do on paper. So be prepared for an interview, but it may not happen. Now, where your case goes smoothly is where, well, I know for my clients, but I'm the attorney representing my clients. My clients tend to go through a smooth process because they do have me there to advocate for them and also to rely on my expertise through the process. Where I do see complications, where I see delays, I see the case going way longer than it should, is where individuals submit it on their own. And I have seen people, they've called me and they express regret about doing it on their own. And the number one thing I hear is, we are married. I never thought it would be like this, because they're thinking, I'm in a real marriage. I want to start my life with my spouse. They're going to see right through that. How hard could it be? And then I usually, unfortunately, at the point where someone who has already filed their papers is calling me, they're at the point where they're like, they say this all the time. I never thought it was going to be this way, because this was with my spouse. I never thought it would be this way. And so the process drags on for some people, because there are mistakes or the application is shabby from the get go, and then it goes through additional processing because of that. So I'm giving you some good pearls here to think about, because I see the mistakes, and when I see these mistakes, I really feel bad for the people that are calling me, and so I want to give you that guidance, give you that input, so that you can be empowered to seek the help and representation you need. Okay, so can I actually apply if I was given a 20-year bar for crossing twice illegally? I'm married with US citizen, 7 years, one baby. So um, usually, if you are given the 20-year bar, it means that you have to stay outside of the United States for that amount of time. Your case is a lot more complex. And unfortunately, sometimes there are waivers available. I don't know what your situation is, and that's where a consultation is going to be crucial. There are waivers, especially if you do have a US citizen spouse, which you do, and you have a child. Even though the child may not be a qualifying relative, it can go towards extreme hardships. But we would have to understand. And then another thing is, when you're crossing twice, it means that it sounds like it's called a permanent bar, but you usually have to stay at least 20 years outside of the United States once you've been given a permanent bar. So, whether you can't right now, you wouldn't be able to apply for adjustment of status or apply. You can always petition, but it's going to be denied if you don't qualify for a waiver or qualify for some sort of forgiveness. You can always schedule a consultation and we can talk. So in the DMs, we do not provide legal advice, and I'm not providing legal advice here either. What we are talking about is general information. If you'd like personalized legal advice where I'm giving you specific information and determining whether you qualify and whether I can help you, you can definitely go ahead and give us a call. In the DMs, what you do get is a response telling you how to get in touch with us, the cost of our consultation, how to schedule your own consultation, all the information you need to schedule an appointment with me so we can talk about whether you qualify and get started. So I can definitely assist you. Go ahead and go in your DMs and look at that message, call the numbers all over my videos, or click on that link and you'll be able to schedule your own appointment without even calling. All right, so I am going to head out now. Thanks so much, everyone. Okay, so I do see one more. How long does it take to get the working permit after putting in all documents and they're all running concurrently? So I'm seeing anywhere from 3 to 6 months for marriage base, and then 6 to 12 months for VAWA. All right, thanks everyone. Have a great weekend. Have a good Friday. I'll be back on Monday where I'll go ahead, take your questions. I'll come with a topic and we can talk it through on Monday. Have a good one. Bye.